Hello everyone, welcome to PNP Studio, and today in Roblox Studio, I'm going to teach you how to keep your workspace more organized with these folders, groups, and you will see in a second unions. So let's get to it. So imagine if you have a part in the workspace, you put a part in, and you move it, excise it, material, everything, and you create like a second part. Okay, so for this demonstration, I'm going to be using two parts. What I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be selecting these two parts using the Control or Shift. Then I'm going to go into the Model tab up here, union them. And now what this does is that it creates a single thing in the tab. And you can sort of like drag the whole thing around. And you have a bunch of these options, like use part color. Because if you use a pastel violet for this one, you say it'll keep being gray unless this is enabled. Yeah, now it's lavender. I don't know why I said lavender. I'm gonna keep this enabled right here. I'm gonna change this to dark gray. Lock it if you want to. I'm gonna snap it onto the ground. Oh, and if you're wondering, yes, you can still rename these parts. So I'm gonna name this rock. Yeah, as you can see, I have a little model over here. I have no idea why, but it's like 6 months old right now. I need to revamp these. But yeah, you can do a lot with this. So if you want to separate a union, just click the separate button right here. And then it'll just go back to being two parts. And if you union them again, you need to re-enable the use part color. Also, another thing, if you're using unions for this, is that you want to set the collision fidelity to precise convex decomposition. Because when I was working on the game, like I had a little river with like in this huge workspace, and then I didn't have the property convex enabled. So when I went to the river, I couldn't get in it because the collision was boxy instead of precise. Like I had a whole like collision box all over the river. So what that property does, it sort of like chisels out the collision in this. Yeah, I won't show you it, but that's what it does. I forgot to rename this part. And let's say you have a bunch of these rocks. I'm just saying them out in a single row. Okay, let's say you have a bunch of rocks and you want to... This works with parts or unions, but if you select all the parts that you want to group, and then hit Control G on your keyboard, and it'll just put everything into a single model. And you can move it around. Stuff. You can have as much since it's a model instead of a union. You can scale the part, so if you want to keep it, like, I keep it at 1 most of the time. Oh, and if you're wondering, yes, you can rename the part. Now, what is different from a model than a union is that you can actually go into the model and then look at parts, and you can take the individual parts out. So with a union, you have to, like, you can't put parts in it. You have to separate the entire thing, and then just, yeah, you can union that, union jack. But with a union, you could just go into the parts and you can move individual parts. Now, if we wanted to do this even more, let's say I have a bunch of columns, and I would rather group it into a folder. No, you can't hit Control G for this one. You need to go to the workspace at this plus button, and then search up folder, and then place these 4 rows into the individual folder. Again, this is sort of like a model, except, yeah, this is basically like a model, except you can't scale anything. Like, it has less options, but it is really good for classifying stuff. For example, I have my setting right here. I have a bunch of folders right here that explain to me what I have in my game. For example, I named this structures, and I have a bunch of structures in my game, like the barn, the silo, the igloo, the pyramid, the mansion, anything you can possibly imagine that can be a structure. Now for round hills, workspaces is just the basic workspace. Boundary, flora, which is trees and such. miscellaneous objects, which stuff isn't classified, mountains, the background, etc., etc. You get the idea. Now, the reason why classifying stuff is so important is that if you don't, let's say I have, let's say, a bunch of parts. I'm just pointing this out here. If you have a bunch of parts in the workspace, and you don't really name them, classify them, or anything, you're not gonna know what's what unless you go one by one selecting them, or you can just do this. But that will take even longer. It's best to just classify stuff as it is instead of going through that whole hassle.